out and staff turnover, right? If you're making a sufficiently high number of changes and you have a sufficiently low change success rate and a sufficiently high mean time to repair, then you can spend all your time on unplanned work. In fact, this is when it's actually better just to put down the shovel and step away from the hole, which is the part of the intervention, right? Which is what we're saying is that, can you see how if you have a given rate of change, that same rate of change, and you can bring down the number of failing changes and unauthorized changes, right? You can't always control failing changes, but you can absolutely control the number of unauthorized changes, right? What happens to unplanned work if you do that? Goes down. Right, exactly. In fact, in Visible Ops we call this electrify the fence, right? The goal is not to kill people who touch the fence. It's just to make sure that management is never under this illusion to have a functional change management process when you don't actually have one. As a anecdotal piece, which actually was a very formative story in our world, which is when we wrote Visible Ops, is that there's a woman named Jackie Shaver. She was leading the ITIL change management process at the Florida Department of Education. She said, in our first 30 days of our change management pilot, we had, say, 200 changes. In the second month, it went down by 50%. In the third month, it went down by another 20%. She was asking the question, why would the number of changes be going down? Right? It's like the business isn't asking for fewer changes, and we're firefighting just as much, and we still have the same amount of unplanned work, right? What do you think she found? Well, I'll tell you what she found, right? When she actually instrumented the infrastructure, right, she found out, holy crap, the number of changes went up, right? The only thing that went down were people showing up to the change management meetings, right? So can anyone kind of hypothesize what would cause someone to stop showing up to change management meetings? Gave up? Why? What would cause them to give up? Workload, right? Is this meaningless bureaucracy that I have to go ask and get approval for, and I have to, wait 6 weeks to get approval? So, what happens if you still need to make changes and you feel like the change management process is bureaucratic? Circumvent it, exactly, right? So, this is why it's interesting to say that. This is what Jackie Shafer did. She said, I have the same amount of unplanned work, so therefore I must have the same number of changes, right? So the mark of an effective change management process is that you have unplanned work going down, change success rate going up, zero unauthorized change. So unplanned work isn't free, right? Where does unplanned work come at the expense of? Planned work, right, exactly. So what we're trying to say is, hey, unplanned work and change management isn't a tactical issue, right? As unplanned work goes down, your ability to complete planned work goes up. In other words, for every project that you've made a commitment that I'm going to deliver something by this time, right? If you're spending 100% of your unplanned work, you have no time to achieve planned work. And so that's what makes projects late. So as you increase completion of planned work, business satisfaction with IT goes up, and consequently, your budget goes up as well. Or at least that's what we're seeing in the benchmarking findings. I'm going to show you two more graphs, and then that concludes the prepared part of this presentation. There are two. Do I have time?
We're a little bit flexible, but we need to conclude soon.
Okay. Well, the lean manufacturers did two very clever. They did a very clever thing, which is they actually kind of proactively negated kind of the primary arguments why, in this case, the domestic auto manufacturers kind of. The excuses they gave of why they didn't need to be high performers. The Japanese have a lower cost base. They tested that. It's like, oh, it's not true. So, they said, you're comparing their best cars with our worst cars. So they controlled that. And they're like, no, if you look at just the luxury lines, right, you end up with the same, results. The two excuses I hear from executives are, hey, high performers are probably only the largest IT organizations. It's like, well, let's test that. It's like, no, it turns out medium performers are bigger than high performers. Right? There's a lot of variance in numbers, but it's like, that's not true, right? That's not an excuse, for not being a high performer. The other thing that we've heard is that we don't have to be a high performer because we're not a bank, right? Especially you hear this in security. And it's like, wow, that's interesting. When we looked at the demographics of high performers versus medium performers, we saw that they're almost the same. In other words, from a demographic perspective, it's not just banks. It's spans almost the entire spectrum of industries hit by medium performers. So we kind of like this just because it helps negate kind of these excuses that people will give why not to do the right thing. So conclusions. ITIL and COBIT are full of good ideas. You don't have to do all of them. The experimental results say that focusing on the 21 foundational controls really do hit all the performance measures that are spanned by the ones that are not foundational controls. Foundational control users have higher performance, as measured by many, many ways. And so there are significant rewards for being a high performer, right? And so we think this helps management focus on the right things to achieve the right results. Let me make one last call to action. We've assembled a lot of researchers to work on this problem, and if you believe that security is more than just a technology problem, and that security is valuable and measurable, and if you want to join a group of academic and industry researchers who care more about this problem than anyone else I know, and want to help solve these problems, we are definitely interested in getting your name. We've been working with about 4 grad students and about 5 PhD researchers, including 4 academic researchers, to help solve what we believe are some of the biggest problems in the space. And if you're interested in that, just drop me a note. I'm Gene K at tripwire.com. So with that, thank you very much, and I appreciate the time.